All of a sudden, this Greenland idea seemed like it might be a possibility. We couldn't find a map that was of much use, the scale. And that was a real panicky moment. There's nobody here to get me out of this. And it was quite an amazing experience treading somewhere that nobody's been before. Hi, my name's John. I work at Argoed Lwyd Outdoor Centres as the lead instructor. The first inspiration for it was actually on a flight over to Yosemite in America, and there's incredible climbing there. But one of the things I really remember on the flight is looking down as we flew over the southern tip of Greenland and seeing these enormous mountains that seemed to plummet straight down into the sea. A year after that, I read in the climbing magazines about the first ascent to the world's highest sea cliff that had taken place on those cliffs. And that just sounded absolutely incredible, although this particular route was quite cutting edge and climbed by some quite elite climbers at the time. I thought there's probably some easier routes there that they wouldn't have even looked at. So that kind of created the seed of an idea. And now I met some really good climbers, sometimes much better than myself, and learnt a lot from them and improved my own climbing. And then all of a sudden, this Greenland idea seemed like it might be a possibility. So I asked them, and that was the start of it, really. There was a huge amount of planning that went on. There were several different aspects to it, I suppose. So the logistics was massive with the trip. It's finding where we wanted to go to. That biggest sea cliff was a major draw, so if we could find another route on that, that would be of interest, I think, to the climbing media and things like that. So I was thinking along those lines, and I thought, well, if it's kind of interesting to them, perhaps there's more chance of getting funding for the trip. So that was one area of looking at all the different areas of funding, and actually there's quite a few different areas, especially for kind of young climbers. The British Mountaineering Council are very keen to support. The Mount Everest Foundation was another one. Then let's do a lot of research with maps and things and previous expedition reports to try and find out what hadn't been climbed, really. And one of the things that was both daunting and exciting about that was that we couldn't find a map that was of much use, the scale. But that made it quite exciting, because that meant, obviously, that there was lots that wasn't on the map to go and explore and find out about. And then it was how to get there. So it took about a week just to get to the nearest town. Yeah, and then from there we kind of, to set up a base camp. So we did that quite close to the fjord, where we kind of access to some streams and some drinking water. We needed to get used to the climbing, so the obvious thing to do was climb the rocks that were close to base camp, which were smaller, to kind of get used to them. But what we've discovered doing that, we learnt a lot by doing that, was that all the midges hang down lower down, so it made the climbing very unpleasant. So we had climbing in mosquito nets. And the other thing we soon discovered is that the slabs that went straight down into the water, because they were lower down, had lots of vegetation on them, so all the cracks were full of grass and vegetation, which meant that we couldn't place gear in to protect ourselves as we went up. So we had to kind of dig out bits of vegetation in the cracks to make handholds and footholds, and it was quite a frightening experience. So we changed tack quite quickly and thought, well, we need to get up higher, away from the midges where there's a bit of breeze and where the rock looks cleaner, which it was. I guess we had two primary objectives at the beginning. One was the huge sea cliff opposite our base camp. James and Rich went and did that because they were the strongest team. And I climbed with Dewi in Wales a lot, so we focused on the climbs on the island instead. So our objective there was an unclimbed peak. Yeah, and that was an amazing experience. And it took us 2 attempts on that summit to get up there, actually, because we went by the longest kind of rock route to start with, which grabbed our attention and looked amazing. But when we got to the top of all the difficult climbing, the summit slabs were all covered in lichen, so you couldn't kind of get your feet on the rock, and it really kind of felt very dangerous. We couldn't really even see where to place gear. They were very, very long days in Arctic summer, so you had kind of like 22 hours of daylight. So after 18 hours or so of climbing, we made the decision it was time to head back down, so we had to retreat. And then we went back up, we went around the other side where the face was a little bit shorter, and we found the route that eventually led us up to the summit. And it was quite an amazing experience treading somewhere that nobody's been before. There was definitely a big feeling of elation, but also kind of relief, because we put so much into getting to that point in the expedition, and we felt, because we'd had people support us and we'd had some funding coming in, we kind of felt that we owed some success to them, if you like, so we wanted to have something to show for it and to prove their kind of faith in us. So But there's always tempered with kind of mountains like that, is that you have that moment of relief and that elation, but then you realise you need to get back down, and that's likely to be quite complicated. Yeah, well, so some of the real highlights were unexpected things, as they often are, and one of those was the wildlife of Greenland, which wasn't the main reason for going there, but it was incredible. So there was a whale, it seemed to come and visit us, that's what it felt like in the mornings, because you'd see it regularly in the mornings at base camp, and it would come up really close because the fjord is so deep, so it can swim in right up the fjord. I love photography, it's one of my big passions, and part of the expedition I had to take photographs. So I took a lot of slide film out there to take pictures. That realisation that what you're photographing might not have been photographed before, so that was quite an amazing experience. There were certainly some scary moments from the trip, many challenges. The climbing itself, especially on the slabs, could be very scary, and there was one particular pitch that would always stay in my mind, because there was a narrow slab which was overhanging a face, so it was very exposed. So it's a narrow strip of rock, but it had a big boulder that just seemed to be perched on it. But immediately above his ledge there was a sort of an overhang with a big wide crack in it. So I went for that one because it seemed safer than risking knocking the boulder. But I got up into the crack, just about got over the overhang, but I couldn't climb it. I couldn't get any protection in. So I was kind of trying to jam my hands in lots of different ways, and my arms and knees and anything I could to try and get up it. And after a little bit of this, I kind of slipped back onto my knee a bit to get a bit of a rest. And then my knee jammed in the crack. And that was a real panicky moment, because I thought, there's nobody here to get me out of this. I really need to get this knee out myself. But the problem is, once I get my knee out, I've got nothing to hold on to or nowhere for my feet to go to. I did manage to free my knee, and I sort of somehow managed to slither out the bottom of the crack and land on the ledge with some assistance from my belayer without falling off the ledge or landing on him. But that wasn't the end of it, because then we obviously was halfway up a cliff at that stage, so we still need to get out of there. Expeditions, I think they're more accessible than a lot of people realise, but sometimes it's a matter of taking small steps first to build that confidence. People can fret so much about the details that they talk themselves out of doing things. One of the first steps I would say to people, if they're really keen, is to join a local club. So it's being part of a community of people around you that are going to support you and help you on that journey is really important. But the funding, the other thing I didn't realise until I organised this expedition, is that funding isn't just for elite climbers. Like, there are organisations that really want to support people on expeditions, particularly young people who haven't got that kind of the money or the finance to be able to do these things. At a kind of personal level, they're really important because they really expand your mind about the world and about people that live there and different ways of living and different cultures. And it also makes you aware of your own privileges and what you have back home, much, much more so. So I think those are incredibly valuable. And then there's the challenge aspect. Challenging ourselves, and however we choose to do it, is important for everybody, because if we don't, we never ever get to understand what we're capable of. There's no way I would have thought any of that would have been possible, but only by kind of challenging yourself step by step do you ever realise what you're capable of yourself, or even what more you could be capable of in a team as well. And that is very much a team expedition. It was 4 of us working together to make it all happen. And I think also it helps cement what already kind of knew to a degree, but that I really wanted to introduce other people to these kind of opportunities, to open up other people's minds to what's possible and to what they can achieve. And it certainly helped that, because after I'd heard these things before perhaps, but only when you experience these things for yourself do you kind of really know that it's true. So now I can see somebody perhaps who's a learner climber and who's struggling a bit, and I know without any shadow of doubt that if that person wanted to, they could go and do some incredible, amazing things with that. And it's all about motivation, it's about wanting to. And if they want to and they've got the support, then there are no limits to that, really.